New Super Mario Bros Wii is too easy of a game, so today I'm gonna make it harder. Here are the rules for this challenge.
Alright, you guys know the drill here. No running, no damaging enemies, no power-ups, no Yoshi, no checkpoints, no mid-air spins, and no co-op. So welcome everybody, glad you can make it to this edition of my hardest challenge series. Last time we looked at New Super Mario Bros U, so today we're looking at New Super Mario Bros Wii. And honestly, I'm pretty well gonna have the same rules as that run because, yeah, let's be honest, these games are pretty well the same thing. But that being said, this game still does have a brand new set of level layouts and challenges ahead of us, such as this nightmare in World 2, another one of these bomb platform levels, and of course, the final Bowser platform gauntlet. But we'll get to all of those later. And all of these levels are just made a lot harder this time due to everything being a one-shot kill for me, having to avoid damaging every enemy, and of course, I have to do all of this with this puny jump arc, as you can see here. Because remember, I also banned those mid-air spins that you have in this game, so this is all I got. Yes, one of the main challenges of this run is simply my movement. Mainly because I can't run, so you combine that with all these other rules, and it turned out to be a very difficult challenge. Also, during these challenge videos that I do, there's usually over like 10 hours of footage for the run that I have to compress into about 20 minutes for these videos. And because of this, I mostly talk about the major challenges in the run, but there are still a lot of cool and interesting tricks that end up being cut.
So I'm gonna start posting all these extra clips and bits of gameplay on my Instagram page at InfiniteBitsTV that you can see in the description. And these clips are just gonna be certain sections that didn't make it in the video, or the full raw version of sections that were in the video, but were all cut up and split up because of the editing. Also, I'll post these clips first on my Instagram page, so you get kind of a sneak peek of sorts, if you follow it. So check out InfiniteBitsTV on Instagram, and let's get this challenge going.
I start the game, Peach gets captured, these toads probably give us the worst types of presents for a run like this, and we start off in World 1. And this world overall really isn't anything that crazy. Really, the crazy hard levels in this challenge come in the final world, but for now, there's really only a few very precise jumps needed. For example, look at this Goomba formation over here. Obviously, I couldn't jump over all three of them, so I had to perfectly time my jumps to fit in the small spaces that they left between them. Then, in the third stage of this world, we get presented with our first secret exit. This is really helpful for us because we can skip through various worlds and don't have as many levels to complete in order to beat the game. Yeah, but what's not so helpful for us is that the entrance of this secret exit is way up there, off screen. And the only way to get it is with a Yoshi or a power-up, both of which we can't use. So we'll have to keep on completing this world as normal. Once we get to the castle level though, the platforming does become a lot more vertical as per castle norms. And with this stage, I have to time my jumps with all these swinging platforms and these brown moving ones. There were some close calls here and there with the timing of everything, but overall I had to cleverly use the wall jumps in order to get over large gaps, and then the boss fight with the Koopa guy was still pretty simple. Oh yeah, side note for this challenge, I guess, is that I'm not going to be counting the bosses as damaging an enemy just because they are required to damage them in order to beat the game, so I'm just focusing on not damaging every other type of enemy instead. Plus, take a look at them all at the end of the game. They look pretty healthy to me, I barely even damaged them. But anyways, we move on, and the only other thing of note in this world really was the last section in this mushroom stage, where I had a few close calls, but by timing the rotation of these, cubed mushrooms I guess, and my jumps, this level was another one down. And then I defeated pretty well the same boss in the final castle level, which was just as simple as the first one. And look at this part. I was literally walking right under these thwomps without a care in the world, but then the second last one actually stopped me. So I had to wait out the last two and then get by. You know, the boring way. And then we get to the next world here, which is this sand world, and it's honestly a lot more difficult when compared to the grass world at least. But the first level started out okay. We got some spike guys to avoid and some sand pits to look at, But then in this very same level, my progress was quickly and abruptly halted. Just look at what I gotta deal with here. As soon as I touch this lift, I immediately get bombarded with Koopas just trying to hitch a free ride or something. These guys quickly take up the entire space on my platform, causing me to either have to damage them by jumping or having them kill me. And all of this happens before I can even have the chance to jump off the raft up on the top right here. So I tried this part multiple times, but there was just not enough room on the platform for me to stand before it got up to the top. So this level is actually impossible by the looks of it. Luckily for me though, this level is actually on a split path, so I can just go to the other one and completely avoid this one. Oh yeah, the split path luck is back. But hey, this level is no cakewalk for me either, don't get me wrong here. I first had to deal with all these sand geysers here, while a ton of enemies were just strolling around, going about their day. But then this level ended with this final gauntlet of piranha plants and sand geysers combined with large gaps. Patience and timing were key to get by in this level, as once I committed to this very jump here, there was no turning back because of my movement. But yes, my friends, after timing the many elements of this part perfectly, I jumped over the last sand geysers and even barely made it over this boomerang bro to beat the stage. And after the first castle in the world, the next two levels actually both have secret exits in them. However, it's not as great as it seems, because the first exit is way up here, meaning we need a helicopter hat in order to reach there. And the other secret exit is in the mushroom stage, and it's also way up here on this pipe. So once again, we need the helicopter hat. And that makes none of these exits actually an option for us, so we are now 0 for 3 on secret exits. And since that's the case, I really didn't want to do another floating mushroom cube stage, so I moved to the left path. And this stage is actually pretty challenging too. Our good buddy old pal Lakitu is back, and again is throwing these spiky guys at us for like the entire level. And then the main obstacles besides that are a bunch of pokies and giant piranha plants that I had to avoid. This one giant piranha over here literally looked impossible for me. Like I was trying this jump over and over, and it always seemed like he would just snatch me up in the very last second. But somehow I just went for it and barely snuck by him. Come on, look how close that was. And then I literally had to squeeze through the entire pokey regime over here, which was the last big obstacle in this world, so we can move on. Because yes, the last castle over here was more boring than anything. It's just a big side scroller with a simple boss. The snow world is next, which means we now have to deal with ice physics. And yes, ice physics are even more frustrating to control while only walking. But we must trek on in this snowy journey. See, the first level you're supposed to use like the penguin suit to slide by everything, or in my case, just slip around the ice looking like an idiot. But no, this ice over here is not gonna make me look any which way. I will conquer this stage and make this jump way up here. Oh, well, I guess it's nice they made a safety net for me. But basically, for this stage, I had to slide down these slopes as much as I could to make it over the larger jumps, since when you jump from a slide, you actually go a bit further in the air, even without running. And then for the other jumps where I couldn't do that, I just had to be more careful. Okay, and then there's this part in the overworld where I literally could not get around these ice bros. See, with all the other overworld enemies like this, I was actually able to just dodge the enemies entirely, so I didn't have to deal with them. But these ice buddies are like impossible. There's only 2 ways to go, and they always literally cover both lanes. No matter how good my juking moves were, they would always catch me. So we had to face the challenge. Luckily though, we don't actually have to kill these enemies in order to progress. We only need to get the 8 balloons. But unluckily for us, the balloons are right next to the enemies, and there's 3 of them that are constantly throwing these ice balls. However, after numerous deaths in this segment, I literally barely jumped over this ice bro using a wall jump, jumped over this one by using a spring and a wall jump, and then finally got some help from this ice bro up here to freeze his friend, allowing me to collect the last 2. And boom, this brings us to the ghost house level of this world, which actually has another secret exit, and it's actually really easy to get for once. All I had to do was fall off this rope at a certain point, and boom, there's the secret door which completes the level. And just like that, we have a secret skip all the way to World 6 already. This is the first major skip of the run, and that's great because World 5 has this whole jungle cruise on a ship again, and yeah, they're a pain if you remember from my hardest Mario U challenge. But okay, here we are in the Rockland, World 6. Now, the gaps between all the jumps are really starting to increase, and there are more obstacles to avoid. There's a bunch of these bullets in the first level here, plus a lot of the times I had to slowly go on these walls or ledges, so of course the timing and patience were key here. And then another level here has the introduction of these mole guys again that always run straight towards you. But luckily, these guys are still pretty dumb. And then there's these like teeter-totter platforms that could totally screw you over if you accidentally put them in the wrong position, so I had to be really careful about how I land on these things. Next is the castle here, and it consists of this giant spike thing that always shoots up in the center as you try and weave left and right in order to climb to the top of the tower. Obviously, there were some really close calls throughout the climb, but the real challenge was at the end with all these platforms moving left and right. I don't know, it seemed like for the longest time I could just not squeeze through this part, but after a while, I just had to go for it, making the slowest mad dash from left to right, and then barely squeezed through and made it to the top. Then a few levels down, there's actually another secret exit. And psst, this should barely even be called a secret because it is so easy to get to. It's really just knowing where it is because this level is incredibly dark. And all of these fire bros are super annoying here, but I simply just jumped my way up to this red pipe. And this allowed me to take the secret exit and a secret cannon. And with that, we're already in World 8. But not so fast here, guys. Even though we've used a lot of world skips in this run, the last world here is probably the biggest difficulty spike I've encountered in a challenge. We're talking about enemies and other deadly threats littered throughout these levels, jumps that are even harder to make, and a super hard boss battle at the end. There is seriously not a single easy level left, so let's begin. And also, if you made it this far in the video, it would be great if you guys would give it a like as it helps the video a lot. And because oh, this is where the madness of this challenge really begins. The very first stage here is already an incredibly difficult one. There are these lava rocks that are constantly falling down in random patterns. Combine that with very little ground space, a lot of lava, and even this black smoke that constantly chases you throughout the entire level, and we're jumping right off in the deep end with this one. There were so many close instances in the first part of the level in which I swear I was dead in numerous occasions and somehow just barely squeezed through all of the obstacles. And if you thought that part was bad, then you have no idea how hard the second half of this level is. Because the jumps here became even harder to make. The platforms were way further spaced out. And there were these lava geysers that always shot up, causing me to just have to wait since I couldn't run through their cycles. This made the black smoke even closer to me, which added more tension and pressure in this final bit. This part just required an incredible amount of precision. Only very small sections of the screen were safe at any given time. But with all the odds stacked against me, I continued on in this final section in which I got to the final jump of the level and I couldn't make it. No way. No way. All of the obstacles in this level were barely possible until, of course, the very last jump. I swear guys, I tried this last jump I don't even know how many times, but the distance was simply just too far for me to reach. Just look how close I was to making this ledge here. It was already hard enough just to make it back to this point in the level, and then sometimes the randomness of these boulders would make it totally impossible, so for the small attempts I could try this jump, it was still barely not possible. There's gotta be a way though. This is not happening to me again. We will not see a repeat of the jump in my hardest Mario U challenge. I don't care how far of a gap that this jump presents, I will be getting past this level. So a brute force method of this gap won't work clearly. The distance is simply too far for my normal jumping arc. I gotta start thinking outside of the box. There is actually one other way to gain more forward momentum though. By playing the first part of this level over and over again, I eventually started to use these slopes to slide down on, and I actually gained more speed after jumping from it. The speed then could be kept for a little bit by constantly jumping, which conserves it. Thing is, I already thought of this strategy, but couldn't use it because the closest slope was this one, and besides already being really far from the jump, there would always be this lava geyser that blocks me. But in another attempt, I actually noticed that there were these little slopes a lot closer to the impossible jump. However, they were very tiny, so my timing for the jumping had to be perfect. And there were a bunch of lava geysers in the way, so I had to time those too. However, after practicing this part in my many attempts and having the timing down to a perfection, I did this. Now that may look simple, but the timing for all 4 of these lava geysers and the falling rocks and then jumping immediately when hitting the slope was super specific and honestly was a bit lucky, so yeah. But anyways, there we go. This level is finally done, and honestly, this one level seriously took me over 2 hours to complete. And it's only the first stage in this crazy world, so let's keep the celebrations until the end, because we have a long journey ahead. But still, this was a major obstacle out of the way. The second stage in this world here just consisted of the ground rotating against the direction I was trying to move in, which yeah, caused me a bit of a struggle. Jumping a lot was key in this stage, but what made it pretty hard was having to dodge or maneuver around the various obstacles while always being pushed around by the ground circle conveyor belt things. But then they just threw a bunch of infinitely spawning Goombas at me, and I was almost caught off guard when a giant spiked ball surprised me, but still, all the obstacles here were avoidable. And this level actually has another secret exit in it, and this one takes us right to the final normal stage of the game, so yeah, it would be super useful to us as well. However, the path to get to the secret exit looks a bit like this. Yes, these are super fast moving conveyor belts that are simply pushing me more back than I can move forward, while only walking in this section doesn't allow for any progress. There's even like a hidden force pushing me back, because even when I try and ground pound, I move back in the air. What kind of scam is this place? I literally tried to get past this part until the entire timer ran out, so yeah, it's impossible to secret exit. We'll just have to take the normal way and progress through the world. This stage right before the castle here consists of lava waves, swinging platforms that lower when you stand on them, and very tight platforming. This was yet another really tough gauntlet in this world. I started by making my way through these drum things that literally sink like a brick if you stand still, so constant jumping was necessary in this part. And then geez, look at all these enemies here. I had to precisely weave my way through everything while looking like a total moron that can't stop jumping. And then after this part, I had to time all these lava waves, which was more annoying while only walking, but then we come to the final part of this stage with all the challenges combined. Damn, you're really making this level seem impossible, aren't you? There were so many different things to keep track of here. I constantly had to move and keep on my toes. And then the lava waves here seemed to be in an impossible position for me to make it over since these platforms were all so low. But by literally using perfect timing and even avoiding this flaming ball guy, I was able to jump my way across this obstacle and finish the level. And then we get to the Midway Castle here, which was slightly easier than the rest of the levels, but just by comparison. The usual precise jump and very good timing was required, but nothing crazy like the other levels here. And then there's a water level in the lava world for some reason. Okay, fine, we'll roll with it. And this level was really more just annoying than anything. I literally couldn't see here. It's a swimming level, and there's all these current pipes that just pushed me around, causing cheap deaths. And obviously, without power-ups, these currents could kill me in the most annoying ways. But with really just a lot of trial and error, this level was done. And then we return to the moving platform gimmick, where bombs constantly fall down and land on your platform. At least this time the bombs don't stop the platform when they land, but if a lot of them get on at once, it can be difficult to find a safe place to stand. The method that I found to make this entire part a whole lot easier was just to stay on the very left of the screen, and I tilted my platform up. This allowed me to avoid every single bomb except one, which I simply jumped over. But whoa there, we are not done yet, because now we get to this section that's like Attack of the Birds over here. There's a lot of jumping, knowing where to stand, and sometimes these birds would just group up in weird ways at times, making it even harder, but still this level is totally doable. Next, we have a vertical level. Ooh, but it's a vertical level with lava chasing you the entire time. Ooh. So yeah, this means I really don't have any time to stop, and I have to optimize my timing more because of my slower movement. Some parts were precise, others were dicey, but you know, this level was entirely possible too, and that finally brings us to the airship, the second last level. So the whole part of the level is just a bunch of different cannons being fired, but except for like this part here, there weren't too many large gaps to make it over, and not really too many enemies, which made it really just about moving slowly and carefully. But then we get to the boss fight, Bowser Jr. And yes, this battle was pretty challenging at first, just because he can take up so much room with all the crap that he throws at you, and from the fire, so he can really put you in a deadly spot. But after learning his patterns more, I defeated this guy and could move on to the castle. Finally, after this brutal world and this brutal run, we are just left with the final level. So let's not waste any more time and complete this run. The first part of this castle starts with a pretty challenging yet completely possible platforming section, but then it quickly ramps up in this falling skeleton platform part. See, in this section, you have to constantly change platforms because they all fall in the lava. And you gotta understand, with my limited movement, I can't reach every platform from the previous one, so I have a lot less options when trying to figure out where to jump to. But then, when all hope was lost and I was stranded on this lone platform on the left here, I made a leap of faith, and a platform out of nowhere barely came to the rescue, and I landed on the literal very edge. Then after jumping and barely landing again, I got to the final warp pipe, which was the end of this section and took me to the final Bowser fight. And what a final test of skill this fight ever was. Bowser keeps on shooting these giant fireballs at me, which is pretty tricky on their own to avoid, and in this part you also have to use them to clear a path for yourself, which is easier said than done. But then came the real test, the platforming part. These platforms are so far apart from one another. Bowser takes up a huge chunk of the screen at times, and he keeps coming closer to you, making it so you can never really stop. And that can be pretty difficult when these platforms have to be in certain spots in order to make certain jumps. Some platforms I couldn't even reach with my moveset as well, so they essentially became death traps if I land on them. For example, if I chose the lower path here, I'm literally screwed and have to die since I don't have a far enough jump to make it to any other platform. So on top of everything else, I need to maneuver this part in a specific path so I don't die. But we've made it this far in the run, guys. Nothing, no jump, no gap is gonna stop me. And the journey continues. Everything I had learned throughout the entire run was combined. Precise jumps, projectiles firing at me that I had to avoid, and perfect timing. This was the most tense journey of the entire run. In many situations, I looked completely screwed at times, but always found a jump out of there. I kept going further and further in this section. Lava waves, Bowser's fireballs, and Bowser himself were right on my tail until I saw it. The final button needed to press, but the jump looked big, impossible to complete even. I did have the height advantage here, but still, there was the ceiling blocking me from jumping too high. I had to perfectly time this last jump as well, but time was not on my side. Bowser was getting close. He swung. He missed me. I had to take a leap of faith. And would you look at that? I barely made the last jump. And I'm talking barely. Look how close I was to hitting the ceiling. And I even just barely made it to the final platform too. Yeah! So I got to press the button, freed Peach from her cage, be a jerk to Luigi, and beat the game. So that is what I call challenge complete.
And here we are. Another challenge has come and gone. But don't you worry, because I still have a lot of challenge ideas in the future that I'd like to try. In fact, the one I'm working on right now isn't actually a Mario game this time, but it's still Mario related. So I'll leave you with that, and I'll see you in the next challenge.